This morning, we continue in this year-long theme of reimagining God. You know, how do you expand our understanding of who He is and what He's up to? And this series is talking about God is there, and in particular, God who is there as He protects us. We have a mission statement, a purpose statement for HarborPointe, and it goes something like this. The purpose of HarborPointe is to provide a refuge of hope. You know, we want to be and it goes on to say, a safe place to give and receive the comfort and encouragement and joy of Jesus Christ. And that's the whole idea of a harbor. We want this to be a safe place so that you can come in. If you're coming in this morning and you're on a cruise liner and you've cruised on in here, you know, you're welcome. But if you've come in on a raft and it's a leaky raft, you're welcome as well. How many people have got the big cruise liner that they're on? Okay, yeah, Dee Dee's on a cruise liner. She's made it, you know. How many of you are kind of bailing water? You're in a leaky raft and then you're just getting the water out and you're just kind of, you know, and sometimes those cruise liners go tip as well. That's a bad thing, but sometimes they tip. But it's supposed to be a harbor and a place where we can get renewed and restored, and we look to God as the source of that renewal. I mean, that's the whole idea, is that we can't do this alone. We need help. God, Psalm 46, in fact, this used to be one of the key verses that we played off of as far as our understanding of what our mission was. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, I think is how that goes. Therefore, will not we fear. I guess will not we fear. That may be poetic. I don't know. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. How about that? Powerful verse. Actually, when 9/11 hit, some of you, it's hard for us to believe that are old. How many of you don't remember 9/11? This is 9/11, I don't know, it was 2001? Is that right? Yeah. 2001. For some of you, that's a long time ago. Where are we in there? You teenagers in our midst. This is, but it shook us up. Those of us that went through this, I was working at a residential treatment center at the time, and it shook up the teenagers there. We had a special chapel service just to kind of focus on the fact that God is still here. God is still in control. In fact, and when I went to church that Sunday, the pastor used this passage as the base for his talk, that God is still our refuge. He is still the one in control. You know, a lot of times we think that our enemy, if we only conquer this guy, then everything's going to be just fine. And so that was kind of the focal point. And then this happened, and then something else occurred. We have ISIS or some other things. We think that we can just get rid of this guy, and so he gets toppled, and then we say, well, maybe everything is going to be just fine. And then we have all these other problems that emerge as well. We've got a guy like this in North Korea. We got a guy like this in Russia. We got these people that are there. It doesn't matter. It seems like somebody's going to replace somebody else. And the scriptures say this: some are going to trust in their chariots, and some going to trust in horses, and some going to think that if we just get the military strong enough, if we're just tough enough, if we're just mean enough, if we're just hard enough, if we're just, then everything's going to be fine. But the truth of the matter is that if we fail to trust in God, all the chariots and all the horses are just not going to, they're not going to cut it, because there's going to be somebody else and something else to deal with. It's just the way life goes. And so we have Jesus saying strange things to people to shake them up, because everybody thinks, you know, if I can only be bigger, stronger, more powerful, then that is the way to find the meaning for life. That's mean I can secure things, I can protect myself. And the Roman Empire thought if they were mean enough, strong enough, tough enough, then everything would go well. But suppose you're one of the countries that has been controlled by this empire, then what is your response? And Jesus said, well, this is what your response should be. You've heard that it was said an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a tit for a tat. If somebody does something to you, you do it back. If you get hit, you hit back stronger, in fact. I mean, isn't that the way? If somebody hits you, you hit. And sometimes we hit before somebody hits because we think they might hit, right? This is just the way life works. But I tell you, Jesus says, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you in the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you to take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Jesus at times spoke in hyperboles. He would say, if your hand or your eye offends you, your hand is causing you problems, well, you pluck out your eye, you cut off your hand. Obvious hyperbole. I'm not sure if this is hyperbole or not. I kind of think that Jesus was saying, some of you have been slapped. You have had your shirt taken from you. You have had somebody a soldier requiring you to go 1 mile. And he said, if you have the mindset that you've got to pay them back, then you're missing out on what I have in store for you, because I've got something else in store. This is a different orientation toward life. I want those who follow me to understand that I'm calling you to something new and different. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you something fundamentally different. I'm telling you to love and pray for your enemies and those that persecute you, so that you may be children of God. How many of us like that notion? I mean, that's emotionally, that just doesn't sit well, does it? I mean, if somebody stands in your way, you're supposed to have the right to be able to go after them and to get back at them. And this is so intrinsic into our understanding of how life works. And Jesus is saying, I want to shake that up. I want to do something to help you look at life from a different perspective than the one that you've been accustomed to. And he's always doing that. He's always messing with us. Whenever we think we've kind of arrived, he keeps on saying, oh no, I'm going to move the bar a little bit. I'm changing things up on you. I want to shake it up. And so when we come here to the safe place at the same time, it's my prayer that all of us get disturbed a little bit, that we all get moved to take a step closer to Jesus' way of thinking and doing. And that definitely includes me. And it's for sure something that Jesus, I think, delights in doing, comforting and upsetting the apple cart at the same time. He said this, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Jesus just didn't say that. He's quoting right now from Deuteronomy 6. He's quoting something that every Jew would say every day. This is just a part of the normal way of looking at life. There's nothing more important than loving God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and yet we keep on needing to be reminded of this, because this is where our protection comes from. This is where our understanding of life comes from. This is the first. It's the greatest commandment. And then he said, there's a second one like it. It's tied to it, in fact. You can't have one without the other, Jesus said. You can't love God without also entering into this commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Now Jesus talked about what a neighbor was all about, and he said, a neighbor is somebody who's been beaten up, and he's on the side of the road, and he's discarded by everybody. Your neighbor is somebody who is in need. Your neighbor is somebody who may not get it. Your neighbor is somebody who may be irritating to you. Your neighbor may be somebody that you would naturally call your enemy. That may be your neighbor. And then he tells a story about this Samaritan who goes by and sees this guy beaten up side of the road. This guy that probably would have said to him in normal circumstance, I don't want to have anything to do with you. He would have probably said in normal circumstance, get out of my face. He would say in normal circumstance, I don't want anything to do. I hate you. But he says, this is the person that I'm reaching out to. This is the person that I want to connect with. This is the person that I put in your path. And Jesus has shaken everyone up by saying this. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now here's the deal. A lot of us don't particularly like ourselves. We look in the mirror and we say, gosh, I'm a mess. I don't like what I see. I don't like the way I act. I don't like the way I think. I don't like what I'm up to. And so a lot of times we, instead of loving ourselves, what we do is we hate ourselves. We hate what we're all about, and that hate sometimes spills over into a relationship with other people. And so this is what's going on. Hate begets hate, and love tends to beget love, and this is a thing. And Jesus says, okay, I want to restructure things. Here's a guy who despised his life. His name was Job. Why didn't I die when I was born? Why didn't I die as I came out of my mother's body? If all of that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be lying down in peace. I would be lying down in peace. I'd be asleep and at rest in the grave. In the grave, sinful people don't cause trouble anymore, and there, tired people find rest. Prisoners enjoy peace there, and there the slaves are set free from their owners. This is what he's saying. Why should those who suffer ever be born? Why should life be given to those whose spirits are bitter? Why is life given to those who long for death that doesn't come? Why is it given to those who would rather search for death than for hidden treasure? Why is life given to those who are actually happy and glad when they reach the grave? Why is life given to a man like me? Some of us have said those very words at some point in our life. Some of us may be saying those words right now, for sure. This is the sum of what Job is saying. I don't have any peace. I don't have any quiet. I can't find any rest. All I have is trouble. And how many of us have felt that way at some point in our life? That's all life is just stuff. And I can't seem to get around it. I can't get through it. And then it's easy for us, when we feel that way, to say two words. The first one is poor. What's the second one? Poor me, or why me? Yes, you could do why me, poor me. It's either one, but it's me. Me is at the end of it. Why me, poor me. And the focal point becomes me. We're just reading Oswald Chambers, My Utmost for His Highest, this morning, and we're talking about he's talking about how we can focus a lot of our prayers on me, and we're talking about that. Well, a lot of times maybe our formal praying might be for other people. My formal praying may be really wonderful, but I was saying to Ann, but my thoughts, which I think Jesus translates into prayers, they tend to be about me. A lot of times it's about my golf game. Lord, help me here. And he doesn't seem to always answer that prayer. He seems like he bypasses that one. This is the writer of Ecclesiastes said, you know what? Life is tough. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out how to make it better. And one of the things he figured was maybe wine would help a little bit. How many of you ever felt that way? Well, maybe a little wine will help. And how many of you said, well, if a little wine helps, maybe a lot of wine will help even more? If it helped one day, maybe 2 or 3 days in a row. Maybe just keep this thing going. Keep it on a roll. And I said to myself, come now. I will test you with pleasure to find out what's good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, parties, fun is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. Well, my mind is still saying, I'm trying to figure out, does this work? my mind still guided me with wisdom. And I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their life. But when I started drinking, it didn't help. It didn't help. It just masked things for a while. And then I said, well, maybe work. If it's not wine, maybe it's work. And how many of you have work has become your God? Work has replaced life. You kind of said, okay, life isn't going so great, so I'm going to pour myself, all that I have, into my work. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees. Gosh, where's Joe? This sounds a little bit like Joe here. Yeah, this is Joe. I mean, Joe, listen to this, man. And Joe's been producing, and it's the Joe garden out there. Now, it's kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with what was the little red hen? Was it the one? Henny Penny, was that the one? It was the little red hen that said, hey, anybody want to help me? Help me at the start. Nobody wanted to help. Nobody wanted to help at any point. Nobody wanted to help at any point. But when she had the big loaf of bread, everybody wanted to eat it. Well, that's the way it is right now. Joe's producing all kinds of, hey, I'll be a gardener, Joe. Let me just take that food off your hands. This is Joe's producing an abundance, though. Fruit trees, parks, gardens, reservoirs of water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I threw myself into work, and I worked like everything. And guess what? As I worked, there was a sense of fulfillment, but there's also a sense in which I became enslaved to my own work. And how many of us have gone through that thing called burnout? We have been burned out by work. And okay, you got wine, work, and women. Those are my 3 W's. You know, you gotta. They're all. He says, I amassed silver and gold for myself, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem, as well as the delights of a man's heart. Yeah, I tell you what, Solomon was really not wise. I mean, all those women, I'm sure I wouldn't go there. I won't go there. I became far greater than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. I gave myself over to everything that I thought would give me pleasure, all the things that were alluring to me. I had the opportunity and I took advantage of it, but it didn't work. Nothing seemed to work. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and all that I toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Some of us have said that. Gosh, is there anything that will bring me a sense of peace and understanding, direction, fulfillment? Will I be protected in any substantial way? And we come back again to the words of Jesus, who said that I want to give you life and I want to give it in abundance. I want to give you the best of life, and I am the way and I am the truth and I am the life. This is the essence of what we are trying to say at HarborPointe again. We're saying that we believe that this is at the core of all of our need, and this is fundamentally what enables us to receive from life the best that life has to offer, is to enter into life with Jesus, is to allow Jesus to become our life, to become absorbed by Jesus and his way and his truth. And truth is really fundamental, because we have a way of fooling ourselves, don't we? We have a way of, first of all, how many of you know somebody that is absorbed in a lie? They're living a lie. A lie has captivated them. They are they're living according to a lie, and the lie is just taking them on a road. It's taking them a road. It's not a healthy road. It's not a good road. The lie is just perpetuating a problem for them. If they could only get off the lie, if they could only get beyond the lie, they would be okay. We know of, and I talk about some people that have fed lies about health and about abilities and about, where some people end up who are very intelligent believe, I'm just not smart. Or some people that believe no one would like me. Or they go on and on. These lies that they've accepted and they're just absorbed by the lie. They've been brought into the lie. And Jesus said, the truth is going to set you free, but the lie will distort us and kill us. I was telling the early service about my first, I had a church in Valparaiso, Indiana. I pastored the church large measure because no one else wanted to pastor this church. It was a church that it was one of these things where the church had fallen on hard times. Was kind of it was down to about 20 people or so. But what had happened was that for a season they were without a pastor, and some group in the church wanted to bring in an evangelist type of person who could sing and preach, and everybody. This one group thought he was just the world, and they moved him into the parsonage. They didn't, and they moved him in, and he started taking over, and then he wanted to put his own treasure on the books because he didn't trust the treasurer that was already there, and so there were two treasurers, and the church, the bank said we're going to freeze the assets of the church because we got two treasurers, and so this went to court to decide who in fact owned this building and who was the church, and so there was this massive split, and the one group that was the former group was the one the other group left, and I came among that group, and that group couldn't get along with each other. They said the Sunday school the Sunday school superintendent, there was a note written about them telling them how awful this person was, and they gave it to me, and they, not only that, it was the treasurer, and I kind of got into something, and they told me that they were going to stay at the church long enough, they were going to give me enough rope, they said. I'm going to give you enough rope. We're going to give you enough rope, and we're going to watch you hang, and we're going to sit in the front row and watch this happen. And I said, my gosh, this is my church. This is my church. What kind of church is this? This is my kind of people. This is, come on in. Watch me hang. So anyways, the church actually, began to change, and some people started coming, and things started happening, and it started growing, and this church started, it was happening, and people, I got my picture in the denominational newspaper about our church is happening. This is what's happening. This is a happening church, because it was really a sad church before. In fact, this one church, somebody told me, don't go to this church because it was, they used to hold seances. Some of the people there used to hold seances, and so it's spiritual. Satan is just all over that. I'm thinking, my gosh, But it was turning around, and people were coming, and we started building a new wing to the church to accommodate the people, and it was happening, and the thing was rising, and I projected, well, if it's going like this, in about 10 years, we're going to be the biggest church in America. It's going up that ladder, and my projection. And by the way, in seminary, you were told that you're valued on how big your church was. In fact, that's what all pastors do, is they talk about how big their church is, and because that's a sense of value and validation. This is how you decide whether you're worthwhile. And so my identity was with the church growing. And when the church started to level out and decline a little bit, then I was just distraught. I started working harder and harder and pushing harder and working harder, and then I went through that thing called burnout, and I collapsed. I came close to having I suppose, a breakdown. I didn't speak for a couple Sundays. And I was just internalizing hatred for myself for not being able to accomplish things that I thought were necessary for me to be okay in my own sight. And some of us have been there. How many of you have set a bar, not reached it, and said, life is not worth living. I'm an awful person. And the truth was not with me. The truth wasn't in me. I wasn't dealing with truth. This is all lies from Satan who's trying to deceive. And Jesus said, truth will set you free. And I finally got a little bit of insight into what was going on. But I still had a lot of anger. And when I started speaking again in church, I began, instead of pointing the anger at myself and saying, what more could I do? I started pointing my finger at everybody else and started saying, look what you are not doing. It was just really, it's really fun when I said, gosh, Larry, I often pick on you and say, you are the person, but I've got Anthony here today, and it's kind of like, spread the joy, but this is what I would do. I would kind of pick on somebody and pick on somebody else and tell them and no one knew who I was going to pick on next. And so it was kind of like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to come to church next week, because, they would get this personal attention, and it wasn't designed to be funny. I was just saying, this is what you said, but this is what you're really doing. You told me this, but I don't see anything. You said you wanted to be in a Bible study. I don't see you there. It was tense. I was calling people out, what they told me and what they were doing. You guess, I had a lot of ammunition, let me just tell you. And I was boom, 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 boom. I was going at, and it was exciting. I tell you what, I had people's attention. Let me tell you what, it was just like, what's going to happen this Sunday? But that's what we tend to do, isn't it? We either point the finger at ourselves or we point the finger at somebody else when there's anger inside of us. And either way, Jesus is saying, it's not about you, and it's not about these other people. It's about me. Do you have a relationship with me that goes down deep in your soul and is more important than anything? Am I the way and the truth and the life for you? Because what you're using is, and what I was doing, I was using Jesus as a means to an end. And the end that I wanted was to make sure that my little empire was being built. And I want to say, one of the great privileges I have, I hate the idea that I would not have HarborPointe in my life. It is one of the greatest privileges of my life. It's something I look forward to. I look forward to everything that I do with HarborPointe. And I don't care, yesterday some of us were cleaning this church, and I look forward to coming down here and just being here with whoever. I look forward to every time I listen to the band practice. I look forward to that. I look forward to every gathering, everything that goes on. It's just something I'm in love with. But you know what? If God were to say, the season's over and I'm taking this on, I'd say there's something more important. It's Jesus is more important. I've already had the trauma of losing my family. And I had to come to grips with the fact that there's nothing more important them a relationship with Jesus. There's nothing more important. We come into this world, the scriptures say, Ephesians is great, by the way, to read. We come into this world because God appointed it at some time that we come into this world. And then at some point, he's appointed it that we will leave. And we come from Jesus, and we go back to Jesus. This is this little brief period in this interlude where we have this strange mystery called life that we're a part of. And Jesus says, and part of that mystery is when brothers and sisters gather as one. Not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as Baptists and Catholics or Pentecostals, not as Muslims or Buddhists, but as people who are underneath the calling, the way, the truth, and the life of Jesus. And that's all that there is. And what we're doing with one another is loving those people that God has brought into our path for his sake. Jesus told this very strange and wonderful story about a guy beaten up on the side of the road. And he just said, that guy beaten up on the side of the road, all the religious people are bypassing him. The only guy that entered into his life is somebody that they despised. I want you to consider the neighbors that I've brought into your life. People that you might call your enemies, but I'm calling them your neighbors. Because I have this whole different plan in store. It's not to build your empire, but it's to build a relationship with me that will transform you and change you. That's my desire. Lord, I pray that as we become more and more the body of Christ, that we're going to be, arms are going to be wide open to people that we would never have thought about embracing, that we're going to be caring for people, young, old, in between, rich, poor, in between, smart, stupid, in between, sinners and saints and those in between. That we're gonna see that all of us are standing in need of prayer. We all need Jesus. We all need Jesus. But none of us need Jesus more than me. I need Jesus more than anybody. I need you, Jesus. I need you. And I pray these things in your name. Amen. Sally's going to be over here to pray with anybody who would like to pray. So.